I'm very thankful that they were there when we needed them.
A few months ago, I had to call the ambulance for Mike. He had called me at work and said I needed to come home. So I went home and found him and made the decision to call the ambulance. He was very weak. We'd been told just a couple weeks earlier that he'd had a series of mini strokes, and he was very weak and maybe somewhat disoriented, but I couldn't get him in my car.
I remember I was hurting. I couldn't get up, I couldn't move. I was just stiff as can be, and I remember falling on the floor. It took me a few minutes before I realized that I would try to get to my phone to call her because I had nobody else to call. So when I did, she came home and she helped me get up off the floor and finish getting dressed because I hadn't even been dressed yet.
Having worked back there, I knew what to expect, but still when you're doing it for someone you love, it's a little different. So I was trying to remain composed.
It was really scary.
So they sent somebody out, and I was so happy when I opened my front door and it was Chad Stark. And it was a familiar face I knew. And he helped me get Mike onto the gurney and out the door.
He'd been really kind to me and talking to me, asking questions and stuff. He was pretty good.
It was comforting, and I knew he was in good hands. I very much appreciated it. The thought of calling 911 and nobody being there is scary. Mm-hmm.
9 years ago, after an ice storm, I slipped and fell off my porch, and I broke both the bones in my lower leg. I could not get up. I actually laid there for quite a while, probably 30 or 40 minutes on my cold, icy sidewalk. It was probably in the 20s. I was screaming and crying and nobody heard me because it was early in the morning on a weekend and no one was outside. It was cold. So finally, after a little bit, my husband did hear me and he came out and found me, and it was really scary. I didn't know how long I would be there. And when you're young and you're healthy, you don't think that you're going to fall and not be able to get back up. You think that that's something that happens to elderly people. And it's not true. You fall down and you break something, you may not get back up. And it doesn't matter how close you are to the hospital. If you're hurt, you need the ambulance. We need the ambulance. There were 2 medics, and they were very strong, and they were able to get me lifted up and get my legs stabilized because it was kind of moving around. It was very painful. They were just really comforting and got me safely to the hospital. It was very icy, but it was nice having somebody there and just not being alone. I don't know what I would have done without them.
So my first experience was riding with my child in an ambulance. I actually was on my way home from work, and it was about 15 minutes out. A friend of mine called and said that she had got hit in the head by a line drive while they were practicing, and she had her laying in the van. She goes, she's just not acting right. So I said, I'll call the ER and ask them if they will treat her until I get there. And so she went ahead and took her. The scariest part was not being here when she got hurt. And so when I got there, they had already saw her and took the x-ray, or I can't remember if they did an MRI or whatever. So they already knew she had a subdural bleed on her brain. And the doctor had already told me that they needed to transfer her to Children's Mercy. They said, we need to go by ambulance. And so I rode in the front and she was in the back. They were just fabulous with keeping me calm. They were kind of keeping me having a conversation and trying to explain to me what could happen. I think he was really just trying to keep me busy so that I wouldn't, be scared. And the one in the back, he was just so good. I wouldn't even realize, every so often he was like, oh, her vitals are this, she's doing really good. I couldn't have imagined her not being where she was. And before I knew it, we were there. You've never felt nervous the entire ride up there. You know, it's never a pleasant experience when you have to have, deal with your child or anybody, a loved one, with an ambulance, but I'm very thankful that they were there when we needed them.